we didn't know how big it was, but we got radio contacts and head for the nearest harbor, and there were various harbors convenient to some of the islands down the Caribbean. So we got in a safe harbor, dropped the anchor, and it blew over. It wasn't very bad. It would probably be 60, 70 miles an hour wind, so it wasn't too bad for us. That was over. On we went. The next stop was Cocosolo, Panama. Again, we took on fuel or some other commodities I don't remember. Now we had to turn to go through the canal. By this time, the other quartermaster and myself had practiced navigation using the sun and the moon, so we felt pretty confident. We go through the canal because the next stop was Pearl Harbor. We went through the canal, which I've forgotten takes 2 days or so, and suddenly we're in the Pacific Ocean all by ourselves, and the war was still on, so we can imagine being mostly landlubbers. There are enemy submarines around. But anyhow, we were told, well, all lights had to be out and all hatches closed, so there'd be no lights. So we traveled by ourselves, heading for Pearl Harbor. Now, at flight speed at 15 knots was very, very slow. So believe it or not, it took us 23 days to get to Pearl Harbor. And when we saw the first peak of the Pearl Harbor Mountains, we were overjoyed because both the other quartermaster and myself had never been to sea. And there was the mountains, and we were going to make it. The only other officer on board that could navigate was the captain. And he didn't bother us very much. He'd just come to check us once in a while. So the two of us did the navigation all the way to Pearl Harbor. By the time we got to Pearl Harbor, moving into the way to enter the harbor, this was quite a challenge because the quartermaster also is the helmsman during what they used to call general quarters in case of attack. So I was assigned to the helmsman of this 380-foot ship. Never been on anything bigger than a 15-foot sailboat. We entered the harbor. The skipper was out on deck calling down the directions, degrees which way we should proceed. What was interesting to me, a little feeling that I had, when the ship's captain was up on top, hollering down to the speaker, "Steady as you go." Well, there was quite a current in the Panama, going into the port. So believe it or not, 350 foot, one could still feel it as I maneuvered my wheel to begin to drift and hold it back. So steady as you go is quite a comment. And we arrived at Pearl Harbor, and by this time, things happened. Germany declared surrender, and MacArthur had already taken Panama. He had returned to Panama. Panama was secured. So instead of carrying 250 Marines, they had something else in mind for our ship that we didn't know about. So we were in Pearl Harbor for a few days, and lo and behold, we were provided with several high-ranking international officers. Apparently they were electrical, mechanical, chemical, all kinds of engineering officers. There were American and French, British, Australian officers, handpicked for some reason we found out later. So we proceeded anyhow to Manila, Philippines. One of the invasion ships, they were called LCI, landing craft infantry, didn't carry food. So during the time we were in Manila, we had several of these small assault ships come by and pick up food. We were in Manila, must have been 3 or 4 days. I don't remember whether we took on more fuel or not. Our next stop was probably going to be Tokyo. Well, that was another navigation challenge for us. One of the things that the quartermasters do during these times when we're underway with no particular problem involved is spending hours in the chart room correcting the charts, where we always had radio contact of sunken vessels or obstructions to add to the information before we went to Tokyo Harbor. On the way, the skipper was nice enough, since we had the time, to take us far enough south to cross the equator. Well, that was a big celebration. Not as big as you used to see in the old sailing ships on your movies that you watch, but we all had extra ice cream and strawberries or something or other as we crossed the equator. And I still have my card in my safe deposit box, having crossed the equator. And as we proceeded down that way, we did stop in Leyte Island for one short trip. And since again we had lots of time, the captain was able to allow us to maneuver a ship close to shore onto the sand. Since we had LST bond, we could